And I'm here with Grammy Award Winning Songwriter.
Great, thank you. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day to you. So share a bit about how you got your start in music.
Okay. So you want to start from the beginning?
Yes, sir. Start from the beginning.
Well, I was born in the Bronx, New Jersey, and my parents are of Jamaican descent, but they loved soul music, and I was born in 1969, but as a toddler in the early 70s, my parents played a lot of American soul music, and my mom said that she was bathing me one day, and she was singing Gladys Knight's "He's Leaving," and she said she heard the little baby go "Leaving" in the right key and the right tone and tempo. So they later moved from the Bronx to a suburb called Teaneck, New Jersey, which was about 30 minutes from the Bronx. And in Teaneck, there was free public school systems and music lessons. And I started the trumpet lessons for free, and then I started with piano lessons actually privately. And that's when I sort of just fell in love with songwriting as a child. And living in Teaneck, New Jersey, the Isley Brothers were neighbors, and Millie Jackson was a neighbor. Kool and the Gang were neighbors. So it just made my childhood dream of wanting to aspire to be in entertainment seem tangible. And I was in school bands, writing songs for fun, and I went to college. I went to Brown University. And then I got out of Brown and then got a job. My first entry-level job was at Essence Magazine. And started there when I was 20 years old and was promoted to entertainment editor magazine. I also used to write a lot of songs on the weekends with friends. And then I got a job, an assignment to interview Queen Latifah for the magazine, and she asked me about if I was a songwriter or a musician, and I said yes, and I took a chance because I wasn't supposed to do that at my job, but gave her a demo tape of some of my songs, and she said, I like this very much, I want to do some work with you, and then she asked me to help her write a song in her brother's memory called Winky's Theme for her brother that had passed, and that was the first cut that I ever had as a songwriter with a professional artist. And then shortly after that, I met Queen Latifah. I met Phyllis Hyman, the late, great Phyllis Hyman. And she ended up taking me under her wing to help her write some songs on the album that came out actually after she passed away. And then she introduced me. I met her at one recording session with Dave Hall. That was our first sort of job together. And another producer she was working with named Barry Eastman. And he ended up liking my style of writing and keeping me around as a sort of new up-and-coming developing talent. And he and I ended up writing many, many, many songs together. And our first big hit together was I Apologize with Anita Baker. So Phyllis Hyman had a lot to do with my introduction to Barry and him involving me with the Anita Baker project. And Phyllis Hyman also... my first big assignment with Phyllis was with Dave Hall, and he was impressed with what he put me on the spot to do with Phyllis, and he ended up having me under his wing, and he ended up asking me to write many songs with him, and we presented If You Love Me, the demo, to Michael Jackson for his girl group, Brownstone, and they recorded that. And those were the first of sort of my two big hits. And then
wow.
I ended up going on to, write more music with those two producers and many, many other artists, and that also a co-write with Barry Eastman that was recorded for Set It Off by Brandy, Tamia, Gladys Knight, and Chaka Khan, and ended up writing, for Carl Thomas, Usher, Beyoncé, Faith Evans, Tamia, Deborah Cox, many, 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 many recording artists, and it was actually Whitney Houston, and when I actually ended up writing and producing for Whitney, I also produced for Aretha Franklin, because I had gotten assigned to a publishing deal. My first publishing deal as a songwriter was with Prince. He had a publishing company called Paisley Park. And my, that was while I wrote If You Love Me, that was Michael Jackson's girl group Brownstone. So Prince and Michael had a lot to do with my early successes indirectly, as executives. Right. But then my second record deal was with my second publishing deal after I left my job in 1997. He had a music publishing company called Hitco. And while I was there, I ended up writing and producing songs like Just Came Here to Chill for the Isley Brothers, Gotta Go Solo for Patti Labelle, who turned 76 yesterday, I also ended up writing a song for Aretha Franklin called "The Only Thing That's Missing," and ended up writing and producing "My Love" and "One Wish" on the Whitney Houston albums. That L.A. Reid was then the president of my publishing company, but he was also then became the president of Arista Records. So then when he became president of Arista Records is when he gave me these, production jobs. He went from Def Jam, where he worked with Patti LaBelle and Isley, where I worked with him on those projects, to then going to Arista. And that's when I ended up working with him, co-writing with him for, projects that he was overseeing as an executive for Whitney and Aretha. And it was Whitney who was actually was a singer, and she was in the studio. She said that she felt like, I had a spiritual calling, not just to be a songwriter, but also to become a recording artist. She kind of said it to me in jest. She said, I think you want to do what I do, baby. If that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. She said it real fast like that. And that was in the middle of recording this Christmas song. And that's when I really was like, maybe she is really giving me that kick in the butt, that inspiration that I have been avoiding or wanting to hear. And that's when I actually started working on my first solo album. So the first solo album was called Introducing Gordon Chambers. The second was called Love Stories. The third, Sincere. And the most recent is called Surrender. And those four solo albums have had me, tour America, tour some international touring, and that, added a whole nother chapter and a whole layer of expression for my life. And those solo albums have had me have a chance to, record singers of our time who are also independent artists, but, really sort of amazing talents like Eric Roberson and Let Us See. I've done a duet with her, and then on the most recent album, I did a duet with the amazing Layla Hathaway. So this is my story. I just turned 50 years old, and that's the way it goes.
So a couple of weekends ago, we lost three of the greats in music: Little Richard, Betty Wright,
Yes.
and Andre Earl. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that was a hard weekend. That weekend was just really sad. I felt really, really sad. It was just like back to back. I mean, Betty Wright, I had known Betty, she and I had done some volunteer work with NARIS, which is the committee of the Grammys, like doing some volunteering work for the R&B, committees of the Grammys. And I had hung out with her, and she came to hear me perform one. And she was just a really warm, fun woman who loved songwriters and loved talent and loved to nurture people. So she had a very warm, fun spirit. And Little Richard, I never met Little Richard, but when I first got out of college, when I was working at Essence, I was part of this group called the Black Rock Coalition, and we sort of gave performances and homage to the Black Rock and Rollers. That group was founded by Vernon Reed, who was part of a rock band called Living Color, as well as Nona Hendrix, who was a founding member of LaBelle, the singing group that Patti LaBelle was in prior to going solo. So when we were there, Little Richard was sort of our one of our inspirations. But I never met him, but Andre Harrell I did meet and had many meetings with, and had been actually the president of Motown, but I stayed at Essence. But Andre was a friend, and I wrote songs, for acts that he had signed to the label, Anthony Hamilton, Mary J. Blige. So Andre was like a godfather of New York. We dearly loved Andre Harrell. Everyone knew him, loved him, just as a person, as a friend. He was very warm and fun and brilliant, and really was the godfather of this modern era of R&B that we find ourselves in, where, with this R&B and sort of the combination of fusion of R&B and hip-hop and style and soul. This era that we live in, we still owe that to him. He's the unsung godfather of it all. So that was a really hard loss that weekend, all those deaths back to back. But it was a reminder to just stand up and be great. If you're still doing music, do it and do it well, and make a difference, and make your conversations and your are watching and learning, and legacy.
Yeah, so out of all of the artists that you worked with, what would be one memorable experience that really stands out to you?
All of them, because I remember these people as people, I never take for granted that they are, even if they've passed on, they are still icons, but they're also people. You know, they're just, we had amazing conversations just about life and love and the pursuit of happiness. Whitney was the most famous, but the most down home and the warmest, you know, and she, you know, I always remember most the interactions, not just how they treated me, but how they treated my friends and my family. Whitney, she was extremely kind to friends of mine that I'd met that, you know, and she even called my parents from the recording studio one day. She said, "You always talk about these people. I want to call them and talk to them." And, you know, I mean, Aretha Franklin, I went to an Aretha Franklin concert one time, and she grabbed my mother's hand. She said, your son is really, really writing. That's how she said, really, really. And she grabbed my mother's hand. So I remember the moments of kindness that they bestowed to my loved ones, you know, and, but, you know, just Gladys Knight, you know, when I first was in the studio recording Missing You with Gladys, hearing Gladys Knight, that, you know, that was my favorite childhood singer as a baby, hearing her sing that verse, I mean, I was blown away. I just could not believe that I was in the studio with Gladys Knight, you know. When Anita recorded, I apologize, I wasn't there in the studio for the session of Missing You, and I just remember getting absolute chills, being blown away when she sang that first verse. So there's been many amazing experiences. I'm very blessed.
So let's talk about your new project, Surrendered. How did that name come about?
Surrender is an album that, you know, slowly but surely, it was kind of my midlife crisis album in a way. You know, my mid-40s, I started working on that album. And I had my first 3 albums were all many albums of love songs. But in my 40s, especially my mid-40s, I started finding myself really thinking not just about love, but also life itself and life lessons, and also, you know, the longer you live, the more lives you lose. You know, unfortunately, in COVID, it's getting even more intense. But even prior to this, just in my 4th decade of my life, uncles and aunts and cousins and friends to pass away. So I was grieving and just sort of looking at life, and I was having just not just people dying, but also, you know, close friends that you think are going to be lifelong friends. You know, you find that you start drifting away or having unresolved issues with, or, you know, just life started to look different than I thought it was going to look, you know? Yeah. And I started writing and recording a series of songs that reflected what I was learning at that particular time of my life. So Surrender was about just surrendering to what God is trying to teach you, not having to always feel you have control over everything, but the higher power up to whatever it is that you're supposed to learn from the experience that you find yourself in at that time.
So how would you say that the music has changed from what it used to be to what it is today?
It depends what music you're talking about. You know.
Well, I mean, music in general. I mean, like from Little Richard back in those days until now, it's been a huge change in music, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it's forever changing. I think that music, first of all, I still think there's a lot of amazing music out there. You just have to be willing to search and find it. You know, a lot of times what has happened was because of the conglomerate, like radio stations buying up other stations, that had a lot to do with impacting music, because you had stations became, you know, wanting to play music that fit into the format of what the corporations were looking for. So then you start to feel like you start to have a lot of music sounding the same. I think like back from the days of Little Richard to now, you used to have a lot more distinct voices. Like you could turn on the radio and Mavis Staples would sound nothing like Aretha, who would sound nothing like Diana Ross, who would sound nothing like the Pointer Sisters. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times the singers sound the same, you know. Then they don't have as many differentiations in their vocal identity. See, part of what I also do is I do a lot of vocal coaching, and that's what I really focus on, is like how to help these singers develop their own identity, learn who they are and what their voice is so they can sort of distinguish. And I think that sometimes you have a lot of music that wants so badly to sound like, you know, a lot of times there's a lot of trend chasing with music that's being made, you know, as opposed to just freedom of expression. But, you know, there are shows like I love the show on HBO called Insecure. And every week on Insecure I watch it and I hear all this cool, really sounding music that I've never heard before. And it's like, you know, that television show that Raphael Sadiq is in charge of the soundtrack is also this new kind of cool pulpit or platform for a different sound. So you have to be willing to listen, to look for what you want to find. You know, I listen to the jazz radio station, and sometimes they just play some really cool stuff. The older I get, I tend to listen to more music that's left of center, that's not as mainstream, and it gives me more pleasure, you know?
Right. So do you think the quality of artists has changed as well?
I think the quality of artists have changed, yes. I think that there are still a lot of amazing artists that just don't always get in the public eye as much as others because they're not as marketed or they may not have the mainstream budgets or apparatuses to promote them, you know? But I do think that there's still a lot of great artists out there. Like I really like that soul singer who plays the guitar and plays the keyboards named Her, H-E-R. I think she's an amazing talent and one to watch that's really coming along really well. But she also sounds like, what makes her great is she sounds like she's rooted and grounded in, you know, in music that's influenced by, I think the artists that I most gravitate to, I think that have staying power, are the ones that seem to have something that's retro or vintage that they're being inspired by. A lot of the artists that want to be, I think sometimes are focusing on making a statement rather than making something that's going to last the test of time. That's my honest opinion on that.
So what makes an artist great quality to you? From being a producer and a vocal coach, what qualities makes a great artist?
The songs. You know, as an artist, it's all about the songs. What are your songs? What are you know, your songs is your brand. Your songs is your business card. People come to your concert, they're coming for the songs. So there's a lot of people who can sing. But what are they singing about? The cream that rises to the top is the songs, to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So what advice could you give to an artist? What should they do?
They should really develop their songwriting, you know, or find songwriters that are up and coming, that are great, that are going to write them some really powerful songs that they can really sing and pour their hearts into, and really make, you know, some music that's going to make some legacy, that's going to last. I always encourage people, when I train people and coach people, I try to coach people to have long careers. Like, you know, what are you going to do when you get asked to sing, you know, a cover song or a country and western song or the Star Spangled Banner at a game? Like, I try to get people set up for anything and everything that could come up in their careers, you know? That's just beyond out of what they're focusing on, what they're doing. Like, to just be all around great musicians, you know? Like, it's who ended, of course, writing and producing all his own music. But in the early days at Motown, you know, he sang songs that were written by the best of the Motown songwriters before he went on his own and started writing and producing his own. But that's what taught him how to be the writer and producer that he became. So it's about mentorship, you know. I definitely am a mentor, and I think it's all very important that people have people that they either get to know personally or that they have an appreciation or a study on the generation of music that came before them. I think that's very, very, very important. Or two generations before them.
So what were some of your favorite memorable sessions while recording the album Surrender?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Surrender, let me think. It's very emotional. The songs on this particular album are very emotional songs. And there's one song called Circle of Love that I wrote really about my family. That was very, very, very emotional. I really remember just breaking down and crying in the studio because I wanted to sort of give my family a love letter while they're alive because we had lost some relatives. I was like, let me not wait till any more pass away and record that particular songs. But, you know, recording music is such a beautiful collaborative process that really I remember just going to the studio with friends who were either producers on the project or other friends who were musicians that I respected and having them come and listen to me lay down a vocal, you know, just to give their feedback, or meet the engineer, Blue, who did the album, produced and did engineering for Solange's Grammy-winning album. So it was just it was a long process, but it was a process that there were a lot of beautiful young people around me that I was like a mentor to, that I was having just come by the studio, and they just were enjoying the inspiration of being in the studio and being around, you know, people. And then I flew to L.A. I had been asking Lalah Hathaway to be on one of my solo albums for 4 years. And finally the timing was right, I guess, for her, and I finally sent her a song that I loved. I sent her two, and she chose Back to Love, and then I ended up flying to L.A. to record it. And I wrote that with a very young producer who's a friend of mine, mentee of mine named Darian. And Lalah went to Berkeley. I befriended her when she went to Berkeley. And Darian went to Berkeley School of Music. So it was just nice introducing the two of them to each other, you know, and having him, but also had gone to his same school. And then my friend Kurt Chambers came to the studio just to hang out with us. And Kurt is an amazing songwriter, producer, and guitar player who's toured the world with many, many artists and has, you know, been nominated for Grammys for songs he's written. So it was just a nice energy and nice vibe of friendship, you know. Studio is like, I try to keep it like a family atmosphere and fun and just a cool place that has an inspirational spirit about it, you know?
Well, Gordon, we sure have appreciated the time that you spent with us. Share with us how we can find out more about you or order your project.
Oh, thank you, sir. All my 4 albums are on all the digital, you know, platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. They're all on those platforms. But also, if people want to contact me because of my albums, they can do so, and I'll be happy to mail them and sign them. And, you know, for people who have CDs and want an actual physically signed CD as a gift, they can contact me directly. My phone number is 212-696-6774. That's the business number. And then people can also email me at gordon@gordonchambers.com. And I'm also available if people want to take a singing lesson. They can do so because I do those lessons on, you know, digitally as well on FaceTime. And that's something that's, if you've never had an experience of having a vocal lesson, it's a fabulous experience. Whether you want to be a professional singer or not, it's just like a great experience. You learn how to, you know, breathe and how to be, you know, command yourself in a room and how to, you know, how to really present yourself and express yourself. So that's a great experience. So those are ways that people can contact me if they want to have that experience. And I'm great with some more music lovers like yourself, and I'm grateful that you thought to give me a call on this very day, on this very beautiful, beautiful day.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. God bless you, and we look forward to having you on again sometime.
I appreciate it. Where are you located? In South Carolina, right?
I'm in Rock Hill,